Hey guys, what's up again? This is Shaheen Shakar and I am going over inequalities with one variable, but this time with negative coefficients. Negative coefficients. Let's go for it. So, the idea here is that like equations involving variables and like the previous video that we did with inequalities with variables, we always want to isolate the variable. Isolate the variable. Now, in this case, I have negative x is less than 4. Now, we could ask ourselves, is there a coefficient or a number multiplying by the x? Yes. Yes, there is. And that number, in this case, is what? It's negative 1. So I could, if I chose to, rewrite this problem as negative 1 x is less than, oh, pen is dying, 4. So, if I have negative 1x is less than 4, the idea now is that I need to isolate this variable. To isolate this variable, I have to do an inverse operation, which means I have to do the opposite of multiplying times negative 1, which is going to be dividing by negative 1. Okay, so that's not too tough of a thing to do. Negative 1 divided by negative 1 is positive 1. And so I don't need to write positive 1x, I can just write x. Now over here I have 4 divided by negative 1, and that answer is going to be negative 4. Simple stuff, right? Now here is where it's tricky, and here's where the gold is. When you change the value of the variable from a negative to a positive, all of a sudden you flip your sign. That's your mind exploding right there. So the idea is that if I have a negative coefficient on my variable, and it's an inequality, then I'm going to go ahead and have to flip my sign after I divide by a negative number. In other words, when I flip my sign from negative x to a positive x, it flips this sign. So when this sign flips from negative to positive, okay, then you will also end up flipping this sign. So I'll be left with x is greater than negative 4. All right, and so to graph that, I'm now at, I mark a 0, I mark a negative 4, okay? And I know that x is everything greater than negative 4, but does x equal negative 4? According to this, no, x does not equal negative 4. It's everything greater than negative 4, okay? So I show that by putting a circle around the negative 4, okay? And then graphing everything to the right of it, okay? Marking that these things are greater. The value of x can be everything greater than negative 4, okay? Because we've got no limit on it right now. All right, so a more complex example of the same thing. If I'm looking at an example like negative 6x is greater than or equal to 30 minus x. Oh, snap! In this case, I have variables on both sides of the equation. The idea is that I want to get stuff, sorry, it's not an equation. I have variables on both sides of the inequality. I want to get x by itself. I want to get down to x on only one side of the inequality and then get x by itself. No variables, no coefficients, just the variable. All right, so how would I go about doing that? Well, I try to see if I can put together any like terms. Since I see variables on both sides, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, what would I do to move, to get the x off of this side? Well, I have to do the inverse operation. Here I have a negative, I'm subtracting x. So to do the opposite, I'm going to add x to both sides. Add x, add x. How many x's are here? And I can think that there's one x, okay? So these cancel out, all right? So now I'm left with only 30 left on this side, okay? And then I've got negative 6x plus 1x. So negative 6 plus 1 gives me negative 5. So I'm now at negative 5x. All right? Now this looks pretty familiar to what we just did in the previous problem. So the inverse operation of multiplying by a negative 5 to the x, the opposite of that, the inverse of that would be dividing by negative 5. Boom. All right? Another way you can think of it, if you'd like, is also you can multiply by negative 1/5. All right? If you wanted to do it that way. But what you'll end up with is negative 5 over negative 5, which still gives you the same thing. All right? So let's just go the way we did before, which is dividing by negative 5. If that confused you, I'm very sorry. It's just another way of going about it. So the idea is that once I go ahead and I have negative 5 divided by negative 5, That just makes 1. So I'm now at x, all right? And then I have 30 divided by negative 5, which gives me, you are correct, it's negative 6. And so now I have just changed my sign from a negative coefficient on my x to all of a sudden it's positive. It's got a positive 1 coefficient. And what we said before is that if I have a positive coefficient after having a negative, so when it flips out, then this also flips out. So go ahead and flip out. I know you're doing mathematics all the time. So we go ahead, since we flipped that sign from a negative to a positive, then this goes ahead and flips as well. And it goes boop, and it flips the other direction. Now we need to graph this. All right? So, hey, I need a 0, and I need a negative 6. Yep. And now in this time, we have x is everything less than negative 6. So, less than or equal to. I didn't see that line underneath. Oh my goodness. So, I go ahead and I mark negative 6. We said less than or equal to, so I can draw the circle and I fill it in, and then I go ahead and shade everything to the left, everything you own in that box. All right, so boop, and then I go ahead and I have that one done. Beautiful. You're doing a great job. So, let's do one more example of this. Are you ready? Because I'm ready. Are you ready? Because I'm ready. Are you ready? Let's do this. Okay. So, erasing, taking time to erase. Okay. So the next one we're looking at, and this one is one that you might see in your books, is negative x over 2 is less than or equal to, let's say, 24. All right? Now, we have not done it before where we have the x as a numerator, where we have the variable as a numerator. What does that even mean? Well, let me explain to you. So the idea is that when I have a variable as a numerator, what I'm really looking at, okay, and the way I can think of it is that there is a coefficient to this x, and that is a 1, and that is a pretty shaky 1, but check it out. Here we go. I could rewrite this. You ready for this? Are you really ready for this? I could rewrite this as negative 1/2 x, because these mean the same thing, all right, is less than or equal to 24. Now, how did I come up with 1/2 when I didn't see that before? The idea is, if I had taken 1/2, negative 1/2, and multiplied it times x, because that's what this means, all right? I'd put it, so if I'm multiplying these, I'd put x over 1, I'd end up with negative 1x over 2, which would then give me negative x over 2. Oh my goodness, that is the same thing that we had up there. Cool? Are you cool for that? All right, so check it out. If I'm going to go ahead and solve for the rest of this problem, we have to go ahead and divide by negative 1/2. Now, we talked about in the previous video that it's an awful idea to go ahead and divide a fraction this way. The way we divide a fraction is multiply it by its reciprocal. Multiply by the reciprocal, all right? So the reciprocal is 2 over 1, but it's also a negative. So I got to make sure that I got negatives on this, okay? Because this is a negative coefficient. You hearing me? All right, so let's go ahead and multiply that out. Okay, these two, negative 2 and 2 and 1 and 1. Okay, so these cancel out, so I'm left with a positive x. But I have to multiply this, okay, to the opposite side as well, because that is the multiplicative property of equality. So I've got negative 2 over 1 multiplying negative on both sides. All right, so negative 2 times 24 is going to give me a negative 48. With my negative 48, I have to ask myself this question. Did my sign flip on my x? Did I go from a negative to a positive? In other words, did I multiply or divide by a negative over here on my coefficient? Yes, I did. So that means that I have to go ahead and flip my sign as well. All right? So now x is greater than or equal to negative 48. All right? Graphing this out, because it's always important to graph it. I've got 0 over here. I've got negative 48 all the way over here. You can go ahead and make your marks all the way through. But we see here that x is greater than or equal to. So one of the values of x could be negative 48. So I have my solid circle. Boom! Okay, right there. All right? And then x is really everything greater than negative 48. So I'd be shading to the right. And look at me being shady. So I hope this was helpful, and if it wasn't, please again enjoy my caffeine high, and I hope you are enjoying mathematics as much as I am, because it's awesome! Have a great day. Peace.